for entertainment purposes only. And if you want true legal advice, contact your own lawyer.
Cal, you know where I'm headed.
All right, here we go. I'm doing it.
Now it's time to play Case or No Case.
Yay!
It's not me. It's not me. An Albuquerque, New Mexico woman kept telling the police, it's not me. Tell it to the judge, they said, and tossed Joy Morales into the back of the patrol car in handcuffs. She was pulled over for rolling through a stop sign in Albuquerque. Police ran her driver's license and said, ma'am, you've got a warrant out for your arrest out of Arizona. That is not me, she said. I've never been to Arizona, much less have a warrant from there. And what's more, I've never had a warrant out for me anywhere. That is not me. Officers have heard that phrase before, so they didn't buy into the whole thing. And it's something that she got upset about. So they dragged her in, kept her in jail for about 40 days, and got to the bottom of the case. But it was a mix-up, but it cost her a couple of months of her life. And so I ask you, Todd and Denise, and we have about a minute left for you to start formulating your opinion. Case or no case? It's criminal, Todd, so I'm going to let Denise go first because I don't want you to play off of his answer. Okay, never mind. We don't have enough time anyway.
Well, could we just ask some general follow-up questions?
I want to ask her name again.
Oh, okay.
What's her name?
Hold on a second. I have it on my iPhone this time because it keeps messing up my computer. Joy Morales, Morales.
And she was arrested for a warrant, but she's saying it's not her, it's somebody else.
Correct. She was pulled over for a small traffic violation. They did a wants and warrants check on her, and they said, hey, you got a problem here, lady. You got a warrant out of Arizona. She said, I've never even, I haven't been there.
And what state is she arrested in?
New Mexico.
New Mexico, okay.
So a neighboring state, we could say.
Interesting.
Yep.
Well, we're going to come back after this break and find out what's going on with Case or No Case. You're listening to Radio Law Talk. Join us or stick with us. Want to hear what you have to say.
Radio Law Talk. I like that show.
This is Radio Law Talk.
Okay, so we're back here, Radio Law Talk, in the middle of Case or No Case. The case of the woman who was pulled over and said it wasn't me. Cal, you want to give us a quick recap?
You bet. Her name was Joy Morales. She got pulled over for blowing through a stop sign in Arizona. The cop did a want and warrant check on her and said, whoa, you got a warrant for you for DUI out of Arizona. She said, no way. Guy says, way. Takes her off to jail. And she stayed in jail for about 4 weeks. I could tell you the rest of the story, but I'd rather do that later. Actually, I can tell you the rest of the story. It turns out that Ms. Morales had a high school friend who was, in fact, pulled over for DUI without ID. She told the officer that she was Joy Morales and gave the officer Joy Morales' birth date. And therefore, she actually did have a warrant out for her arrest, even though it wasn't her. And so she sought counsel, and that's where the question comes in, case or no case. Mr. Cunin, what say you?
When did this happen?
Let me look real quick.
Dun, 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 dun,
I don't know.
Dun, 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 dun,
I do not know.
dun.
Sorry.
Okay, so this is very.
It's not an old case like back in the 1800s or anything like that. They didn't get you for DUI in the 1800s. It was kind of expected. Life was hard on the plains.
Well, yeah, look, back in the 1800s, it would be RUI, riding a horse while intoxicated. Which, interestingly enough, talk about self-driving vehicles. That technology's been around since.
Exactly. Horse knows the way home. What's the problem?
Yeah, right. I fell asleep. Well, here's the thing about this case.
Yeah.
This is something that happens. I'm waffling between whether or not this is an actual case or not. I can tell you that if it is an actual case, in my humble opinion, represents a colossal failure on the part of law enforcement to actually verify people's identity.
To figure it out?
Exactly, because, look, it's not just what you say. When you get pulled over and they take your fingerprint, when you're arrested for something, your fingerprint is how you are identified. It goes into the system based upon your fingerprint identifier. So when this person gets arrested and she gives her fingerprints once she gets taken back to the jail, they would run that, and this comes back to somebody else. The warrants should not have matched because the friend can lie about her name and age in another jurisdiction, but she can't lie about her fingerprints.
But you see, it was misdemeanor DUI, and they only gave her a citation, but she did not show up for court.
Yeah, and
So
even...
she had an FTA.
Okay, all right. Oh, brother, I'm going to say no case.
Okay.
I'm going to say no case because even on a misdemeanor DUI, they still arrest you, take you to jail. They don't cite and release on DUIs. They shouldn't. They haven't, in my experience, for the last at least 20 years. They always take you in and book you. So I'm going to say no case.
Okay. Pardon me. Denise, what say you? Case or no case?
I'm going to say it's a case, and it has to do with the fact that she spent 40 days in jail, and they did not release her. They did not get, it's a case, and it was brought about by some kind of a false imprisonment type of a charge or failure for them to get the information out of Arizona, or Arizona failing to, try to get her to Arizona State.
By the way,
or something.
Not just one jail, but 2 jails. One in New Mexico and one in Arizona.
Yes, I think it's a case.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has to do with the underlying idea that she has to be able to be released on her own recognizance or released through bail or bond, and that it's 40 days in jail for this type of a misdemeanor allegation against her, no conviction against her, and it wasn't her in any way. And I think it does come up as maybe a civil case.
So civil case, what do you think the outcome of the civil case would be?
I think she wins.
Interesting.
Oh.
Todd is shaking his head up and down and going, maybe?
Well, I look, if this is a case, given this scenario, I would absolutely think that a civil case would be coming, because after you give the answer of what this really is, I'll talk about some of the problems that are attendant if this is a real case.
Okay, well, I guess we can get to the bottom of this and conclude. I'm sure that people are sitting on the edges of their car seats wondering, well, children sitting on the edges of their car seats
Mom,
going,
give me the sippy cup. I want to know what case or no case is.
I want an answer here. For those of you who say this is not a case, may I see by a show of hands, because it was, in fact, a case. For those of you who say there were criminal charges proffered against the authorities who wantonly left this young woman in jail, may I see a hand there? Okay, there's nobody
criminal charges
doing that. For those of you who say there was a civil case filed against the jurisdictions involved, that would be Denise, and the answer is
yes.
And not only that, but they didn't bother to take it to court. They settled out of court.
That would make sense.
Both jurisdictions, both New Mexico and Arizona, because you know what? How can you put this kindly? It was a royal screw-up.
It was.
It was.
Just an absolute...
And 40 days of your life, that's a lot.
That's what she said. She said, I'll never get it back. By the way, as for her friend, a certain Miss Archibek, she pled guilty to aggravated DUI and criminal impersonation, and actually had to spend a year behind bars for doing all of that. So her friend paid the price, but both of them paid for the crime. I wonder if she could have petitioned to have the person she impersonated's time removed from her sentence.
Yeah, you got credit for the 40 days.
I mean, that is something that happens. Somebody gets pulled over, they give their brother's name or whatever, so that's the offense. But here's the problem I've got with this, and with the why there should have been a lawsuit and why there was. See, if you get arrested in New Mexico and you don't waive extradition, what you're saying is you got to prove that warrant is me. And so then they've got to come in, roll your prints, do everything. And if the other jurisdiction just did a cite and release and didn't roll the prints and didn't do that, that's on them. That should not have been enough to prove extradition to get her from New Mexico to Arizona.
Well, you know what's interesting? When they really finally did this, they had a photo from the scene, and then they had her on a subsequent booking photo, and they compared those two photos and said, this is not the person we're looking for. So everybody was embarrassed. This young woman had to sit there in jail, truly an innocent person.
Wow.
And she got some cash for her
Before
trouble.
we get into the next thing, I just want to
that's
follow
it.
up on one last statement, the Todd Cunin last word, about the criminal justice system based upon our last case or no case, and this person that spent a lot of time behind bars for something she didn't do. You hear this a lot from folks where they say, it's just not fair, the criminal justice system needs to be revamped, and you have to understand what the Constitution provides and guarantees and what it doesn't. The Constitution, where our criminal justice system comes from, innocent until proven guilty, the presumption of innocence, right to remain silent, you need a warrant for protections against unreasonable searches and seizures, the whole ball of wax. That guarantees you due process, but it is not a guarantee that in certain occasions, innocent people won't be found guilty, that innocent people won't spend time behind bars. It is a guarantee that if you are accused or looked at, whether rightfully or wrongfully, that you have a mechanism to defend yourself for a system or to raise an argument as to why you did not do what you're accused of doing. It is not a guarantee of the result. It's a guarantee of a process, but not a result. And sadly, we see sometimes people are convicted that didn't do what they're accused of doing, even though a jury said that they are. I don't know if you could ever come up with a system that guaranteed that innocent people would never be found guilty of something they didn't do, unless it was an all-knowing being that came down and says, I can do this and this. And that sounds great, but my problem with a system like that is that same being would say, well, Todd, you might not be guilty of this, but here's a bunch of other stuff that nobody ever knew about that you are guilty of. So.
Yeah, let's look at the real stuff. I was thinking maybe Bernie Sanders could come up with a plan like that.
I'm sure, yeah,
Right.
and along with everybody getting free medical bills in college.
I'm sure it'll come up in one of the debates.
Sure.
I'm teasing, Denise. You know that. I did hear the rim shot. Okay, all right. Okay.
Thank you. All right, so I'll get off my soapbox with that.
Go to the website, radiolawtalk.com. That's radiolawtalk.com.